What's up, Trek Nation, and welcome back to After the Snap. It's me, Tasha Pierce, and if you guys listen, that is the sound of no smoke detector going off in the background. So thank you for keeping me safe in these Federation streets. But anywho, welcome back to After the Snap. This is my recap review of the fourth episode of the third season of Star Trek Picard. This one is called No Win Scenario. It is the second that is directed by Jonathan Frakes, written by Tretta and Terry Matalas, and it goes a little something like this. With time running out, Picard, Riker, and the crew must confront the sins of their past and heal fresh wounds, while the Titan drifts helplessly towards certain destruction within a mysterious space anomaly. So if you have not yet watched episode 4 of season 3 of Star Trek Picard, what are you even doing? From this moment forward, I'm dropping spoiler bomb after spoiler bomb. So tread carefully in these Federation streets. And if you'd like to know exactly what I thought of this episode, let's go. Now, in this episode, one of the things that I really like is that we are in this nebula until we're not. This is the only place that we are, with the exception of flashbacks and the use of the holodeck on the USS Titan. But besides that, we don't go anywhere else. So, yes, we miss out on a Worf and Raffi side story, but we keep our attention focused on what's happening on the USS Titan. Some of the things that we know are that we're drifting aimlessly into the center of this nebula towards a gravity well. We have no power, we have no weapons, we have no nothing. We also have a changeling on board that's just running loose, just willy-nilly on changeling on the ship. So that's an issue. We also have some tension that we had some unresolved issues from last week's episode. But before we get into all of that, we're going to start with 5 years earlier, where we see Admiral Picard hanging out at 10 Forward in Los Angeles, having a solitary meal, and a group of cadets come and they just start to ask him questions before he can even get into his meal. They got a million questions for him. They're hanging on his every word. They ask about his encounter with the Hirogen Alpha, which I'm like, how? Why, how? But okay, he explained that Worf set a trap for this Hirogen Alpha. The Predator became the prey, and these cadets are so excited to have the ear of Admiral Picard. Picard then takes this opportunity to tell them that no matter how desperate a situation may appear, as long as they and the crew have trust in one another, there is always hope. Now, in case you didn't know, that's the theme of this episode, because it seems that we use flashbacks to set up the theme. This has been something that has been done for 3 consecutive weeks, I believe. We're using a flashback to set up the theme of the episode. And while there are a couple of points that are in this episode that I have a couple of issues with, the opening scene with this 5-year flashback was not one of them. I was okay with that. I also like the bridge scene when each of the bridge officers I expect to see in the spinoff had their time to shine. The Titan is continuing to sink in his gravity well. ASMR reports that there are no more systems from which to siphon power to the shields. Moore reports that the main power is down to 9%, and the more they use, the faster it depletes, because that's how power works. If you use it, you don't have it. It's like you can't have your cake and eat it too. But anywho, Esmar and Tavine both tell Riker the reactors will melt down if they pull power from the warp core. Basically, the ship is heading to certain death. This is Kobayashi Maru for your ass. The crew gathers in common areas to conserve life support, and they have pretty much given up. And the fact that this crew, led by this core group of officers, has given up is one of the first things that I have issue with. I know we're dealing with an entirely different Riker than we are used to seeing, but for everybody to just start basically writing their wills, I would not have expected that with the crew that we have present on board the Titan. Now, we get the Riker Picard makeup scene that was just about as abrupt as You Killed Us All scene from last week, but I'm okay with that. We didn't need to see them bicker for a while to understand that there was some tension between these two people who are so very close and who are so accustomed to working with one another. Riker had to admit to Picard that Picard was correct. Thaddeus' death had changed Will. Will had been attempting to escape reminders of the finality of death. The anecdote that he talked about with watching his child's coffin go down into that 6-foot hole, and it looked like it went on for infinity, was beautiful. It was it made me understand why he would be hesitant to basically write a death sentence for all these young people who are aboard the Titan with him. It also made me understand why he would be trying to escape his family during this very trying time that they are all going through. It almost feels like you're a failure. You can't take this hurt away. You cannot stop the people that you love from feeling grief. And he became numb, so numb that the absence of feeling was probably killing Deanna. So yes, beautiful. Made me understand his plight a little bit more, and it also made me understand how he ended up out here with Jean-Luc Picard on this life or death mission. But he did give Picard a piece of advice. He said, this is going to be your last opportunity. This is goodbye, my friend. This is it. So this is your chance to make amends with your son that you didn't know you had. Get to know him now, because this is it. You got to get your affairs in order. It's over. We about to die. It's over, Jean-Luc. And ever since looking at the closing credits for the first episode of Picard season 3, I was wondering how or why do we get 10 forward in the holodeck? And now I understand. The 10 forward scenes were when Jean-Luc Picard and Jack step into the holodeck to have a drink and to get to know one another before their untimely deaths. Now, when Picard asked Jack if he'd ever been to 10 forward, Jack said no, but we all knew that he had been to 10 forward before, right? Right. Okay, they talk of some of Picard's exploits, his hair loss, before they get to the meat and potatoes of this visit. Picard wants to know why Jack did not want to meet him. Now, Jack talks about how he was comfortable being an outsider and not having to belong, but we know that's all BS. He said he didn't need to make amends with Picard, but Picard responds that he needed this time with Jack. So going back into these flashbacks and these young people all surrounding Picard and asking him and bombarding him with questions, and all of it was about his career. We saw young Jack ask a question from the bar, and Picard answered, well, the question was, well, what about a family? What about everything away from Starfleet? And Picard answered, Starfleet is all the family that he ever needed. So Picard doesn't seem to realize that that's Jack. In that moment, of course he doesn't realize it's Jack. He doesn't know this kid from Adam. I'm not 100% sure, and you can please let me know down in the comments if he put that together at the end of this episode. So I know I'm jumping all over the place, but I didn't want to forget to talk about that. I know, of course, we know Jack remembers that he went and talked to his dad at 10 Forward and got the impression that his father didn't want a family. But does Jean-Luc Picard remember having this conversation and has now put it together that was Jack? Let me know what you think in the comments. And I guess I should also mention that, while everybody else was giving up, Beverly was still working. Beverly was still on the clock. So I didn't mention that Beverly had discovered that these energy surges coming from the nebula were actually labor pains. It took her a while to come out and say it, but we're going to need that for later, so put that in your pocket. But she was still working on a solution to the problem, and she was the only one still working on a solution to the problem. And I guess that this is let the women do the work day on the USS Titan, because Seven was still working as well. Seven had been tasked by Riker to quietly track the changeling, to not tell anybody that we've got a shapeshifter on board, to find the shapeshifter and to dispatch of it. And remember that she had been decommissioned by Shaw. Riker was like, I could reinstate you, but I'm not going to. You can do some things while you're outside of Starfleet that you couldn't do if I reinstated you. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Basically saying, if it means murder this thing, murder this thing. So, okay, she knows her task. But she goes to the least likely MF on the ship to help her, and that's Shaw. Now, Shaw always has a joke. She goes to his quarters. He says, bang up job your friends are doing with the ship, which, it was a moment of levity that was quite funny to me. But she don't have time to joke around with Shaw. Once he learns of the situation and that the changeling arrived on board the ship before they picked up the crushers, he tells her to look for the changeling's pot. And I know how bad it would be if somebody stole my pot. I would really be mad if somebody stole my weed. But what? Huh? Oh, an actual pot? They're looking for an actual pot. Yeah, changelings apparently all need pots or buckets to transform into their regular liquid self. I thought that was something that was singular to Odo, but apparently all the changelings need a bucket. But Shaw was telling her to look for the bucket and get the goo out the bottom of the bucket, called that residue. So she's going around to the quarters of Ensign Foster, who, by the way, is DEAD, dead. They found his body. He'd been dead for a minute. But anywho, a poor Ensign Foster, I'm sorry. How do I? Okay, anyway, she finds the pot with the residue in it, and she's going to take it to the biochemistry lab so that they can input into the computer and scan for it on the ship. And that way they will know who the changeling is, no matter what shape or form they're in. But she runs into the changeling while she's looking for the changeling. She runs into the changeling in the corridor, and it inexplicably drops the person that it was walking with. Like, just turns around and just shoots this woman for no apparent reason. I don't know why he didn't take his first shot at 7. But anywho, he drops the officer that he was walking with before getting stymied by 7. She hit him a few times with her phaser, and he slithered on off. Yeah, she didn't kill it. She just tried to hit it with the stun, I guess. Okay, so back in Holodeck 10 forward, we are about to be treated to an epic monologue about something many of us suspected from the beginning. But before that, we get to that, Picard is still telling stories to Jack. This one about he and the late Jack Crusher had once had to fly blind in a borrowed shuttle because they lost power in a meteoroid storm. They improvised by diverting power between the docking thrusters and life support for 10 fucking hours. That's our F-bomb, y'all. Jack navigated while Picard powered the thrusters. So we knew that this was going to come back and be important, right? Because they put too much emphasis on the how. And I don't know why they didn't put this thing together a lot sooner. Like, this is how we can get up out of here. It took a little while. Also, another question that came up, and one of the things that I took issue with is that the holodecks were still running. Now Picard responded to Jack when he asked how we running holodecks when we don't have no power to anywhere else. We running out of power to life support, but we got a holodeck. And Picard answered, hey, we keep these powered with a different power source so that situations like this, people can go someplace and be comfortable as they wait for their death. Anywho, my question is this. We got a ship full of engineers, scientists, some of the brightest minds in Starfleet are on this ship. And nobody said, before we just give up, can we try to figure out a way to divert the power from this holodeck that we really don't need to life support to give us a few more hours, or to the warp core, or anything? Anything rather than just sitting in the holodeck getting drunk off a synthahol. And product placement. They had the freaking bottle of Jameson, and every time the camera turned, the label to the doggone bottle turned with it. Come on, man. Come on. But okay, I'm not mad about that. I'm telling you, these are things that I noticed. I'm a little bit upset about the not trying to get the power from the holodeck, but I ain't too mad about the Jameson bottle. Just then, Shaw enters, walking with the cane because his leg is still busted up, which I also don't understand. He's on pain medications. I have seen them heal injuries far worse than his little broken leg without the person having to walk on a cane and without being on pain medications the way he was. But anywho, this is where we get this awesome monologue, even though it was the biggest buzzkill in the world. You walk into a bar with this story. But okay, because I don't want to miss a single part of the story, I'm gonna read it straight from the notes. Shaw enters, walking with the cane, complimenting the harrowing tale of survival and noting that Jack's mother was liberal with her pain medication. He asks if Picard ever brought up when they first met. Now, Picard don't have no clue what Shaw's talking about, but don't worry, Shaw about to tell him. He had been aboard the USS Constance on stardate 44002.3, 34 years prior to where we are right now. And y'all know that sounds real familiar because that is the date of Wolf 359. Now, Picard remembers what that means, but Shaw made sure that everybody else in the bar knew that this was the Battle of Wolf 359, in which 40 Federation ships battled against one single Borg cube, and that Borg cube was being controlled by Locutus of Borg. And Shaw had been in engineering during that battle, and one moment he's in engineering, the next he said it felt like space was burning. 50 of the Constance's crew made it to the life deck, but there was only one escape ship with 10 seats. Now, everybody on this ship is friends. You get to be friends with the people you work with sometimes. So these 50 people are down here, and only 10 of them are getting seats. They all, they didn't want to fight over these seats. It's all like just pretty much just standing here like, man, we're going to die together. But a lieutenant came down and began picking out people randomly to get into the pod. And Shaw was the 10th person chosen. Just some dipshit from Chicago, he called himself. He was the last person to get a seat on the life ship. The lieutenant didn't even count herself. She told him to get in. And ever since, he has had this survivor's guilt. He's wondered if the lieutenant made a mistake. Was there somebody else more worthy to have gotten that last seat than him? He asked Jack, again, did you know where your daddy was? Locutus of Borg was the one flying the ship. He'd been on this cube. And Shaw said Locutus was the only Borg so deadly that they gave him a goddamn name. Oh my goodness. Now Jack started getting a little upset, like, hey man, I'm talking to him like that. But Picard just shut it down, was like, let the man talk. I know, I understand how you feel. He got on up and eased on out the holodeck, and Jack followed behind. So Jack and Picard are out in the corridor, and they finally run into Beverly, who gets around to telling them that, hey, the ship is floating in amniotic fluid of a life form preparing for birth. So just when the situation seemed hopeless, Jack thinks of a way out. Of course, each contraction affects the energy on the ship. The lights blink when the thing has a contraction. So perhaps we can use each wave to hitch a ride out. We saw something similar that was brought up in my Discord. And if you are not a member of my Discord, there will be a link in the description where you can just join the Discord and join the conversation of our theories and all of that. Dream Prism came up and said, hey, did you notice that was just like stormy weather when Michael was navigating Book out of a similar situation? I did not think of that. So thank you, Dream Prism, and also Clarence. Both of them brought that up in the Discord. But anywho, perhaps they was going to be able to use these waves to hitch a ride out of this nebula, and it took a lot of convincing. But Riker finally gets on board with the idea. He has an opportunity to address the crew. We get to see one of those good old captain pep talks, like so many captains before him. I was really glad to see his honest and down-to-earth communication. He did not sugarcoat what they were about to do and how improbable it was that this thing was going to work, but they had to try. They enlisted the old grease monkey, the dipshit from Chicago, the charming asshole, Shaw, to hotwire the nacelle. So we needed him. He and Seven were the unlikely pairing to go down to nacelle control. Shaw admits that if a changeling wanted to stop them, this was the place they'd do it. Hello, foreshadowing. We know that we're about to get a visit from the changeling, right? Because it was going to be the best place for a changeling to come and disrupt their plans. Seventh asked Riker to make sure nobody else came down to the nacelle control area. And shortly after they started working on these nacelles, City LaForge comes down to the control room. And she's like, I got to sit down here to help. Now, we knew when she walked in the door, something ain't right. She's supposed to be up there navigating us about this nebula when they give the word. What is she doing down here? So Seven put the phaser to her head and was like, basically, what's my name? And Sydney says, Commander Hansen. And with not a second thought, Seven dropped her because she knew she does not call me Commander Hansen. She calls me Commander Seven out of respect. And Shaw, I think he got the point. Then number one, that's the name that Seven prefers to go by. And also, he owes his life to Seven right now, because I'm pretty sure that the changeling was going to kill him and assume his identity, and that would be the best identity to have on this ship. But anywho, since Picard is the only one who has experience flying blind, he takes the con. And just like the good old days with him and Jack Crusher, he and his son sit where Picard is calling out the thrusters and Jack is navigating them around the asteroid field that they have to get around to get out of this nebula as they ride this wave. Just like old times. It was beautiful, beautiful moment. It came back around from the whole conversation that they had in the holodeck. You had everybody on the bridge to take in this wonderful occurrence, which the occurrence that is so wonderful is they were also witnessing the birth of whatever these little jellyfish things in space. Yay, they got to see that happen too. But as they got out of the nebula, who was out there waiting for them? Y'all know it was the Shrike and Vatic and her ship full of changelings. Look, I saved this for last because, yeah, we went back to the Shrike. We was a little bit back and forth to the Shrike as well. And we learned that I guess Vatic communicates with the other changelings by slicing her hand off. And then she literally talks to the hand because the hand becomes a face. And the face that was just her hand is her boss. Now, I was still kind of confused at what the hell was going on here with Vatic cutting her hand off. Because number one, she cut her hand off with a knife that either is Klingon or it's Raymond. It's one or the other. It might be both, but Clarence pointed out to me that it was very much like the knife that was used by Shinzone. And it also kind of looked like a Klingon blade that I had seen in another movie. But anywho, she used this knife to cut her hand off. And then the hand becomes the face, and the face tells her, you need to get your ass back in that nebula and go get Jack Crusher. You are expendable. Everybody on your ship is expendable. I need him. So go get him. And she was like, I'll go. So a lot of things, a lot of feelings that I have about this. Number one, she don't look that scary anymore. She looked like she was scared of the hand, the face. She was okay, the face. She looked like she was afraid of the face. The face was the big boss. Number one. Number two, when she cut her hand off, she winced in pain. She was hurt by cutting her hand off. And she goes back. She was like, I can't, with all the weapons that I have, I can't go down there. It's going to destroy the ship. And he was like, I don't care. You go get Jack. So she let go of the portal weapon, just throw that one out into space. Later, we find out that Vatic is, I guess, a changeling. I don't know. I didn't know until Terry Matalas said it on Twitter. So don't be mad at me if I spoil everything for you, because he spoiled it for me. He said that she was a changeling. So I'm like, okay, so why did she get hurt when she cut her hand off? That was one. And then number two, why is she carrying around another changeling on her hand? And number three, what is she so scared of it for? Why is she so? I thought they all knew what each other was up to anyway, because they have a connection in the link and all of that. Why is she so afraid of this particular face? So yeah, I had problems with that. That bothered me. And there's one more thing to talk about before I get into ratings. Last but not least, what does any of this have to do with Jack? Like, why is he so important? Now, we saw him looking in the mirror at the end of this very rough day where they finally get out of this nebula. Did I mention that Riker threw a rock at the Shrike? Yeah, he threw a big ass asteroid using the exact same method that she used to throw the Helios at them. He took that tractor beam and threw a big old asteroid at her, and it damaged her ship pretty bad. So, yay, Titan. You guys got y'all lick back, and I am really glad. Now, this still doesn't answer what the heck this has to do with Jack. Why is Jack so important to the changelings, to this entire plan that they have? What is his involvement? Now, we still see Jack looking in the mirror and having these visions, and they ain't of sugar plums. He's seeing these vines, his red door. The red door opened more this time. So more light came in. We got it open more, but we still don't know what the heck is going on. We hear Seven saying, Jack, Jack. And then we hear another voice saying, find me, together soon. I don't know what to think or what to make of that. I'm still trying to figure it out. I'm still trying to put my finger on what that could possibly mean. If you guys have theories, please share them down in the comments. I am open to hearing anything. You guys know I like to put something out as far as a theory video or a refresher on certain characters. So if you got any of those kinds of ideas, put it on down in the chat. I'm all ears. I'm all ears, because at this point, I don't know whether I'm coming or going. I am looking forward to next week's episode where we maybe catch up with Rafi and Worf and find out what's going on, and also maybe catch up with some more of the legacy characters to kind of move this story along. Let's see where things are heading, because I got a million questions, and I like being in this position at this point in the season. We've got some answers, but every answer yields a couple more questions, so I'm here for it. As far as my rating goes, this was easily the best to me of the 4 episodes that we've gotten so far. So things just keep progressively getting better. However, those few little things, the nitpicks that I have, and the fact that Terry Matalas is dropping spoilers on Twitter is not making me a happy camper. So I have to deduct just a little tiny bit. We still ain't getting no 5. At first I was about to give it a 5. I was gonna overlook the holodeck thing. I was gonna overlook how quickly everybody made up and was back to kumbayaing. But then I got a little upset. I got a little mad. 4.9 on this one. You were so close. Tell me what you thought in the comments below. This one, again, like I said, fantastic episode. Next week's episode is called Imposter. I wonder what that could be about. So if you enjoyed this review, please smash the like button, subscribe to my channel, turn your notifications on so you won't miss an upload or a live stream. And speaking of live streams, 4:30 p.m. Central Time on Sundays is when we do deep spoiler chats. I want to hear what you have to say. We're going to talk about some theories, and we'll get a bigger, deeper, more inclusive conversation about this episode. And if you'd like to support After the Snap Movies and TV on another level, please slide me a super thanks or take the plunge and join my channel like these fine folks. Thanks so much for kicking it with me this week once again, and I will see you in the next one. Live long and prosper. Peace.